Hello, we begin now a continuation of our Musar movement investigation. The first two classes were about Rabbi Slabodka and his dynasty, and indeed his what he inherited to all of us, what he gave us. We said that Rabbi Slabodka had planned to make a movement that would impact on everyone. And before we forget, today's class is Lili Nishmas Rachalei Bas Chaim Tzvi Aleh Shalom. We wish to thank all the Na'aleh people, and of course Mrs. Libby Bomser from the studio. And we continue. His plan was to create a Musar movement which would be the answer to all the accusations heaved upon the religious Jewry from the so-called Enlightenment. It didn't really succeed. Where he was successful was in creating students which were able to spread his gospel, the message of Musar. We begin today with the most fascinating of all, which is Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkel, Der Alter von Slabodka. In 1849, a star was born that's going to take the dynamic that Rabbi Slabodka had created and refine it, and polish it, and expand it into a force that would change Jewry from that point on. This is Rabbi Nosson Tzvi Finkel, the ultimate educator, the mechanech par excellence, the Alter from Slabodka, or in Hebrew, Hasaba Mislabodka. I have a theory why all the Musar leaders were called Saba. I must confess from the outset that Rabbi Wein did not buy my idea, so I don't know how good it is. But I was wanting to suggest the Alter means the old man, or the Saba, the grandfather. Because in a Musar yeshiva, the job of the mashkiach was so intimately involved in the students. It was not a teacher-student relationship. It was much more like a familiar relationship, more a grandfather than a teacher. So the Saba from Slabodka, from his small wooden yeshiva, would emerge the who's who of the 20th century. And in that yeshiva, a yeshiva of 500 students, there's a kollel of 14. It had a real spiffy name. It was called the Yad HaChazaka. If you get the analogy. We left Mitzrayim, the Yad HaChazaka with an outstretched hand. And the Rambam's classic volume is called the Yad HaChazaka. For Yad, Yud Dalid, there are 14 volumes. And in this kollel, there were 14 giants, such as Rabbi Aaron Kotler, Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, Rabbi Yaakov Ruderman, Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner, Rabbi David Leibowitz, Rabbi Alter Shmulevitz, Rabbi Pesach Prushkin, Rabbi Eli Henkin, Rabbi Lezidel Finkel. This is the who's who of the next generation. Now let's look at their institutions. Rabbi Alter Shmulevitz was involved in the Vardik. Rabbi Lezidel Finkel was the Mir. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky was Torah Vodas in Monsey. Rabbi Yaakov Ruderman, Yeshua, Baltimore. Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner, Chaim Berlin. Rabbi Aaron Kotler, Lakewood. Rabbi David Leibowitz, the Chafetz Chaim Network from Queens. Each and every one of them was a major force. Rabbi Eli Henkin was the posek, the halachic authority of America. Rabbi Pesach Prushkin, the Rebbe of Rav Moshe Feinstein. Rabbi Reuven Katz from Petach Tikva, and Rabbi Yechiel Yaakov Weinberg from Switzerland. Every one of them was a giant. Anyone had refracted the greatness of their Alter von Slabodka. Each one going in their own way. He was the master, and we'll talk about this at length, of making a person achieve their potential. Maybe why do it at length? Why don't we just start now already? Interesting question. How much of your potential do you use? I've asked this question to my students often. I teach in seminary. And I get the most hilarious answers. I ask the students, how much of your potential do you use? And they answer, 2%, 3%. One girl said she uses 4.2%, which is a rather strange answer, particularly when you have in mind that 78.6% of all statistics are made up. Now, how does she know she uses 4.2%? Whatever it is. If you think you use 2% or 3% or 4% of your potential, there's something fundamentally wrong, and you have to try and increase. If you were to use just 25% of your potential, that's an indictment. Not just using a quarter, only using half. And no matter how much you use, you should always be striving to use more. In Slabodka, the Alter was able to get a person to open up that potential vault and get the maximum. I thought about this in high school, and to be frank, I didn't think about all that much in high school. But I thought about if I would have midterms all year long, I'd be a genius. I'd also probably crack up. In Slabodka, the students were in finals all year long. But the Alter was the calmest man that ever lived. There was no tension. But everyone wanted to do the most they could do. Not the minimum, but the most. And always striving to achieve more and more and more. We'll be coming back to this, God willing. Fundamentally, he worked on just one principle, which is Gadlut Adam, the greatness of man. You are so sublime, so lofty, so grand, so resplendent. How could you sin? If you had the proper image of yourself, knowing what you could be and who you are, then you'd realize it's apasnish, it's inappropriate. Why succumb to something which is so much lower? That was the principle of Slabodka, and it was highly successful. We know in parenting, and this is very hard to achieve, very hard, but I'm sure the highest level is not correcting children and telling them they're doing something wrong, but to let a child know that you're disappointed in them and you expect it higher from them. That would be the highest level. If you know who you are, then it behooves you to act in accordance with that. The Alter posited that we have no scope